Welcome to this edition of the U.S. Army Europe podcast. I'm Jesse Granger, and we're very excited to welcome today's guest, the Sergeant Major of the Army, Kenneth Preston. Thanks for being here today, Sergeant Major.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks very much.
I know we don't have a lot of time with you, so I want to get right into it. First of all, what brings you here to Europe?
Well, it was an invitation from Command Sergeant Major Capel and General Ham to come over and spend some time here with the command. I usually get over here about twice a year, so it was an opportunity to come over and see USER again and visit the soldiers and the families here in Germany. And I had a great visit yesterday down at the 21st TSC. I participated down there in a wreath laying and a memorial ceremony for the soldiers that they lost in combat. I had a chance today, spent really the better part of the day down at Landstuhl with the staff and faculty down there and all of our wounded warriors that are down there.
And what is it that you look for when you go on these visits like this?
Well, my role is to really go in and meet with soldiers and families, talk with leaders, and really I see myself as an educator. I like doing forums. I did a forum today with a very large audience. It was joint from all the services, but just to talk about the Army, talk about what we have going on in the Army and where we're going for the future. So it's to educate. I'm a teacher. I'm a trainer.
So you've spent a lot of time here in Europe visiting and serving as well. What would you say some of the advantages are to serving over here in Europe?
For soldiers and families that get the opportunity to serve in countries outside the United States, it's a very unique opportunity that most Americans never get the opportunity to experience. And to come over here and live out in a German community, to travel and live in a country that's not your own, I think it makes our soldiers and their families more culturally diverse. It's an opportunity to learn another language. You learn cultural sensitivity, and it's a very unique opportunity that soldiers and families have. And as I look back over my career, I've had 4 tours in Europe, 3 here in Germany, 1 to England, and every one of those tours of duty have been very, very special. And there's very special friends and relationships that you build during each one of those tours of duty, and it's one of those opportunities that lasts a lifetime, but at the same time it's those experiences that make us who we are.
And now you've had the opportunity to see the training here in the European theater, and then actually putting the training to the test in theaters like Iraq and Afghanistan. How is that working?
When you look at the capability of the Army and specifically the forces that are here in Europe and the training opportunities that they have, there are many engagements out there that our formations have to interact and train with other armies. The training facilities, the training areas over here are world class. And speaking firsthand from experience, having trained an army that deployed from here down to Kuwait, and then led the invasion going into Iraq to defeat the Iraqi army. The soldiers and the units and the organizations that came out of Europe were first class, and they were phenomenal in combat. And likewise, when you look at the follow-on missions that they had at security cooperation, counterinsurgency, they really did a world-class job at completing those missions.
Your military career began 35 years ago. That seems like a long time. Has it felt like that?
No, it's retirement's inevitable for all of us, and at some point in everyone's career, the Army career comes to an end and we transition to do something else. But it's gone by just like the snap of a finger. It's gone by very quick. I've had a wonderful career. I've loved doing what I've done in the Army, and as I told a group of soldiers yesterday down at the 21st TSC and all the leadership, the soldiers stay in the Army for 3 primary reasons. And I think back to that first time when I re-enlisted. It was the command climate, the leadership that I worked under, and I can tell you that my battalion commander was Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton, my company commander was Captain Ivanko, my first sergeant was First Sergeant Thee, my first platoon sergeant, section sergeant was Dale Stark. So when you have leaders like that, you can remember after all this time. It was a very positive command climate where you really wanted to be part of the team. You wanted to be part of something bigger than yourself, and they really built an organization that was a band of brothers and sisters. Second reason was job satisfaction. You know, I came in the Army as an armor crewman. I was a scout on motorcycles. I was on tanks. I was the gunner on a battalion commander's tank. You know, so for me, job satisfaction was fun. I enjoyed doing what I was doing every day. The Army was paying me to ride dirt bikes. I was on tanks. So it was very rewarding for me. And then third, quality life. And, you know, being married, coming in the Army with a very young family, the quality of life that I was able to provide for my family was as good or better than what I could have done getting out. And, you know, my original plan was to get out after 4 years and go back, go to school and be an architect. But, you know, going back and living on the farm, living in a house trailer, going to school full-time, working the farm part-time, there's no way I could have provided the quality of life that we had in the Army with what I would have had going back home.
And no regrets?
No regrets. I've, you know, my personal education goals, you know, I've completed. So I've still had that opportunity to go to school and, you know, finish not only a undergraduate but graduate degree. So those goals, that was a personal goal that I set for myself. Raised 3 children in the Army, and I've been, you know, very rewarded with a lifetime of experiences.
So speaking of your experience, what would you say you've seen change in the Army or in the military over your career, and what stayed the same?
Well, let me start with the second part of the question. I'd say the thing that stays the same is soldiers. It's being a soldier, being a non-commissioned officer. That doesn't change. It's timeless. You know, when you look at our 7 Army values, our warrior ethos, you know, they've been our values and our ethos now for 235 years. So just like the Army song, you know, the Army keeps rolling along, and even long after I'm gone, there'll be great leaders coming in to take my place, you know, to keep the Army moving forward to the future. But as far as change, I think you know, there's been a lot of change, but you know, change is important. Change is good. There's nothing bad with change. You know, if you don't change, then you end up becoming obsolete. And then, particularly from an Army perspective, and you know, when you look at the security, the defense of our nation, and protecting the American people, had we not changed, there's many other threats out there in the world today that would have far surpassed where we were in 1975 when I came in, you know, straight out of high school.
Looking back on your legacy as the 13th Sergeant Major of the Army, how do you feel to have had the opportunity to lead and serve with the soldiers and the non-commissioned officers that you've had a chance to serve with?
You know, I've got you know, 35 years of friends and colleagues out there that I've worked with, and you know, probably the thing that that I'm most proud of is, you know, those soldiers and non-commissioned officers and officers that I served with in years past who have gone on to positions of great responsibility. And you know, while I probably only had an influence in a small part of their career, you know, being a part of their success, you know, makes you very proud that you've served. You've able to give back and contribute to somebody else's success, you know, in this organization. And of course, as they move up in the ranks now, they are moving on to take the Army to a whole new level.
On your way out, how do you think the future looks for the Army and the non-commissioned officer corps?
I think when you look at the Army as a service, and I look at you know, our non-commissioned officers, and in fact, you know, my theme coming up for the annual Nominative Sergeant Majors Conference is the profession of arms and the professional non-commissioned officer. And now as we begin to see an increase in dwell time at home, and most of our units out there now are getting about 18 months, and that dwell time at home is going to continue to increase over the course of the next year and a half. But as dwell time increases, what we want to do now is start to refocus, you know, back on, you know, some critical skills. You know, one, we want to get back to full spectrum training, full spectrum operations, you know, to rekindle some of those tactical skills that may have atrophied over time. Second piece is, you know, to get back to some of the garrison functions and operations that we've fallen away from. Ensuring that soldiers are being counseled on a monthly basis. Non-commissioned officers are getting quarterly counseling. Those kind of programs are very important out there to bring back and refocus as we have more time now back in garrison.
Okay, so as a Sergeant Major of the Army, it's fair to say that you get out a lot.
I do. I travel. In fact, the office tries to keep track of the miles, and to me, traveling 300,000 miles a year doesn't mean a lot. That just means you travel a lot. But I think that it's who you touch and who you influence during the course of those travels. It's getting out there and speaking to soldiers. It's educating. It's teaching leaders. It's understanding what the concerns are out there in the force, and then really bringing those concerns back to someone back in the building that can affect change, or be able to really take a close look at making change. And then where we can't make change, at least then we know and understand what the goalposts are, what the boundaries are for the quality of life, or that factor out there that we're trying to affect a soldier family life.
Okay, so in your travels, you've met a lot of soldiers. After all these years, what would you say is a soldier's story that still sticks with you? What's one of the moments that you'll never forget?
Well, to pick something different, outside of Iraq and Afghanistan, and I get down to the Horn of Africa, once or twice a year, and 2 years ago I was down in Djibouti, and during that tour I had a chance to meet a Staff Sergeant Colson. I flew into Camp Lemonnier there in Djibouti. At that time, Master Chief Petty Officer Roy Maddox was the Master Chief down there at that time, and he sponsored my visit. But we flew up to Ethiopia, to the city of Dire Dawa. And Dire Dawa is the second largest city in Ethiopia. But there was a Staff Sergeant Colson that met me there on the ground. He was the NCOIC of a civil affairs team. And it was a four-man civil affairs team. It was led by a captain, which at that time the captain was out of theater. So he really was the NCOIC, OIC of this team. He had 13 soldiers there from the Guam National Guard doing security, and he also had a number of other soldiers in there doing work as well. We jumped in his SUV and we drove out through the city, and this is a city of 300,000 people, very poor. So you can imagine driving through the city, 3- and 4-story buildings, narrow alleyways, thousands of people out on the streets, little 3-wheel taxi cabs. We drove through the city streets, and we got up to a point where Sergeant Colson had a team of Navy Seabees, and these are construction engineers that were out there putting in the 21st and 22nd water point for the people of the city to draw potable water. And of course, I had a chance to talk to the sailors there, those Seabees, and passed out some coins. But it was amazing to see what they were doing for the people of the city there to be able to get potable water. But from there, then we drove out to one of the suburbs of the city, and he showed me a school construction project. And this was a primary, secondary school, 2-story building. It was a $200,000 project. The building was, for the most part, complete. They were finishing up putting the spackling on the walls, and all they needed was blackboards and desks and chairs. But here's a staff sergeant that's overseeing the construction of a school that was going to take care of literally hundreds of students here in the city. And then of course we went from there, went back to their safe house, which their safe house at that time was in the middle of the city. It was a 4-story building. He had 2 airmen. Their command and control cell was on the 4th floor. He had 2 airmen up there, a tech sergeant and an airman doing the comms link back to Camp Lemonnier, which was 500 miles away, in Djibouti. So here's a staff sergeant, his team of sailors, airmen, and soldiers out here in the hinterlands doing an amazing job.
Wow. And
right now today we've got 231,000 soldiers currently deployed to 80 countries around the world. And when you take Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, you kind of move them off to the side. those other 77 countries out there that we've got soldiers in, many of them are the Staff Sergeant Colsons out there right now that are partnering with these other countries, helping these other countries build a security force, and whether it's training a police force, building capacity within their army so these countries can protect their own borders, can protect their own people, so that we don't have to deploy soldiers in large numbers down there to do that for them. And imagine being Staff Sergeant Colson and writing your resume, and what you can put on there about bringing water to 300,000 people in a city, building a school for hundreds of kids, and really running an operation where you've got 15 or 20 people working for you at any one time. So it's pretty amazing out there what young leaders are getting the opportunity to do.
All right, Sergeant Major, I know you've probably got to get back on the road, but we really appreciate you taking time to talk with us today.
No, you're welcome. So thanks very much. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come in and spend time here in Europe, and spend time here with the soldiers and families in USER once more.
Well, good luck on the transition from military to retired life.
Well, everybody at some point transitions, but as we always say, once a soldier, always a soldier, and I'll find some other capacity to be able to contribute, in a different uniform.
And that's about all we have time for on this edition of the podcast. For more on the Sergeant Major of the Army, you can always like him on Facebook. Just search SMA Kenneth O. Preston. And if you've got questions or comments for us at the podcast, you can always engage us online on Facebook as well, and on Twitter, and that's at twitter.com/US Army Europe. So until next time, for the US Army Europe podcast, I'm Jesse Granger. Thanks for downloading.